Close your eyes for just a moment. Try to remember the heavy, comforting ticking of the mechanical clock on your kitchen wall, or the deep, rich aroma of coffee brewing on a Saturday morning. We are traveling back to the 1970s in America. This was a time when our homes were not filled with smart gadgets or endless digital distractions. Instead, they were filled with ingenuity, resilience, and a quiet kind of magic. Today, we are going to explore 20 frugal household habits from that golden era that made us feel incredibly wealthy, even if we did not have a lot of money in the bank. These were not just ways to save a few pennies. They were profound daily rituals that built character and bound our families tightly together. Stay with me until the very end, because the final memory we will share is perhaps the most touching. A simple evening ritual that I guarantee will bring a tear to your eye and a smile to your heart. Before we dive into our memories, let us take a moment to understand the beautiful context of the 1970s. Time simply flowed differently back then. It moved at a much slower, more deliberate pace. We did not live in a world of instant gratification, where anything you wanted could be delivered to your front door in 24 hours. We had to wait, and in that waiting, we found immense value. There is a modern myth that because we lacked the advanced technology and endless conveniences of today, we must have lived poorer, more boring lives. But anyone who actually grew up in that era knows the exact opposite is true. Our lives were undeniably richer in emotional connection, in genuine sincerity, and in physical reality. We interacted with our neighbors, we touched the earth, and we respected the things we owned. We were not isolated behind glowing screens. We were together, facing the challenges of inflation and energy crisis with a stubborn, cheerful resourcefulness. It was an era where making do with what you had was not a sign of poverty, but a badge of honor. As we walk through these 20 memories, you will see how these simple, frugal habits created an atmosphere of deep, enduring wealth that money simply cannot buy. Let us start by remembering the sturdy metal coffee can that sat proudly on the back of the stove in almost every 1970s kitchen. Do you recall the heavy sizzle of breakfast cooking on a weekend morning? The thick slices of bacon curling in the seasoned cast-iron skillet? When breakfast was over, not a single drop of that precious grease was ever thrown away. Instead, your mother or grandmother would carefully lift the heavy pan and pour the hot, golden liquid into that repurposed Folgers or Maxwell House can. You would watch as it slowly cooled and solidified into a creamy white layer joining the accumulated history of dozens of previous breakfasts. This was our liquid gold, the secret ingredient that made everything taste better. When evening came, a spoonful of that saved grease would be scooped out to fry potatoes, to season a pot of fresh green beans from the garden, or to give a rich, smoky flavor to a simple pan of cornbread. We never thought of it as a sign of struggling or poverty. It was just basic common sense, a deep respect for everything the earth provided. Nothing was wasted, and in return, our home-cooked meals carried a depth of flavor that no modern cooking oil could ever hope to match. It was a daily ritual of preservation, a tiny act of household management that made our kitchens smell like warmth, comfort, and enduring family love. Do you remember the satisfying feeling of running your thumb over a thick, slightly sticky book of S&H Green Stamps? Going to the grocery store or the gas station was not just an errand, it was a mission to collect those little perforated squares of paper. The cashier would hand over a long strip of stamps along with the receipt, and the real fun began when you got home. Families would gather around the kitchen table armed with damp sponges or just a dry tongue, carefully licking and pressing the stamps into the little collector booklets. It felt like a game, but the rewards were wonderfully real. You would eagerly flip through the glossy redemption catalog, dreaming about what those filled books could buy. Perhaps it was a new set of mixing bowls, a shiny toaster, or if you saved for what felt like an eternity, a brand new bicycle or a comfortable lawn chair. Filling those books taught us the incredible value of patience and delayed gratification. We did not have the luxury of clicking a button and having an item delivered the next day. We earned our treasure stamp by stamp, page by page. When the day finally came to visit the Redemption Center, it felt like walking into a magical treasury, where our thriftiness was suddenly transformed into tangible, beautiful rewards. We felt truly wealthy because we had worked together as a family, saving diligently to bring something special into our home. And now let us recall the unmistakable scent of hot iron pressing down on stiff denim. In the 1970s, children played outside until the streetlights came on, crawling on the concrete, climbing trees, and inevitably tearing holes in the knees of their favorite blue jeans. Throwing away a perfectly good pair of pants just because of a hole was absolutely unthinkable. Instead, your mother would go to her sewing basket and pull out a packet of stiff, oval-shaped iron on knee patches. You would stand there watching as she turned the jeans inside out, place the patch carefully over the frayed gap, and press the heavy, steaming iron down with all her might. The hiss of the steam and the slightly chemical smell of the melting adhesive filled the room. Those patches rarely matched the faded color of the denim, but nobody cared. Walking into school with patched knees was entirely normal, a shared badge of honor among active neighborhood kids. It meant you had a mother who took the time to mend your clothes, and it meant you were out there living life to the fullest. Clothing was an investment, passed down from older siblings to younger ones, continuously repaired until the fabric simply could not hold together anymore. This simple act of mending taught us to value what we had, to care for our belongings, and to understand that something broken could always be fixed with a little heat, a little pressure, and a lot of maternal care. Think back to the feeling of walking through the backyard on a breezy summer morning, surrounded by the crisp, clean scent of damp cotton. Hanging clothes on the outdoor clothesline was a fundamental chore that shaped the rhythm of our weeks. You could hear the squeak of the metal pulleys and the snap of a heavy wet bedsheet catching the wind. Women would carry heavy wicker baskets full of freshly washed laundry out to the yard, using wooden clothespins to carefully pin each item to the line. There was a specific geometry to it, hanging the large sheets on the outside to hide the more personal undergarments from the neighbor's view. Nature was our dryer, powered by the bright 1970s sunshine and the gentle afternoon breeze. When you finally brought the clothes back inside, they carried a fragrance that no modern fabric softener could ever replicate. It was the smell of fresh air, sunshine, and hard work. Sleeping on sheets that had been dried outdoors was a profound luxury, crisp and cool against the skin. This frugal habit saved electricity and money, but it also connected us to the weather and the changing seasons. It forced us to slow down, to step outside, and to interact with our neighbors across the backyard fences. Taking down the dry clothes while the sun began to set was a peaceful, meditative end to a productive day, leaving us with a deep sense of accomplishment and a basket full of sunshine. Let us step into the quiet evening hours in the living room where the television might be playing softly in the background. While others relaxed, the matriarch of the family was often busy with a task that has nearly vanished from the modern world. I am talking about the meticulous art of darning socks. When a heel wore thin or a toe poked through, the sock was not tossed into the garbage bin. Instead, it was stretched over a wooden darning mushroom, or more often, a burned-out incandescent light bulb. Using a long needle and a spool of thick darning cotton, your mother or grandmother would weave a perfect little lattice of threads over the hole, creating a new fabric right before your eyes. You could hear the soft, rhythmic sound of the thread pulling through the cotton. It was a hypnotic, mesmerizing process to watch. Darning required patience, good eyesight, and a refusal to let good materials go to waste. Those mended socks would be worn again and again, carrying the little woven scars of thriftiness. It was an unspoken lesson in endurance. We learned that worn-out things still had value, that wear and tear were natural parts of life, and that a little bit of dedicated effort could restore usefulness to almost anything. In those quiet moments under the glow of a reading lamp, families bonded, stories were shared, and the simple act of repairing a sock became a profound expression of enduring love and resourcefulness. Do you remember the glorious chaos of a Christmas morning or a birthday celebration in the 1970s? But even amidst the excitement of tearing into presents, there was a strict household rule that we all knew by heart. You had to be careful with the wrapping paper. If you ripped the paper too aggressively, you would surely hear a gentle scolding. We were taught to carefully slide our fingers under the tape, peeling it back slowly to preserve the beautiful metallic or snowy patterns. Once the gifts were opened, the real work began. Every salvageable piece of paper was meticulously smoothed out, folded flat, and placed into a dedicated box or drawer in the hallway closet. The shiny plastic bows were rescued, their sticky backs peeling away, soon to be resurrected with a fresh piece of tape next year. Sometimes a piece of paper would be reused so many times that it became soft and wrinkled, carrying the memories of past holidays. We did not view this as being cheap. It was a creative challenge, a way to make the magic of the holidays stretch just a little bit further. Opening that closet door months later and seeing the colorful stack of saved paper brought a rush of anticipation. We respected the resources we had, and there was a deep, satisfying joy in taking something beautiful and ensuring it lived to bring a smile to someone else during the very next holiday season. And speaking of wrapping gifts, let us not forget the incredibly popular and colorful alternative to store-bought paper. When a child was invited to a weekend birthday party, we rarely went to the store to buy expensive, glossy gift wrap. Instead, we turned to the glorious, oversized Sunday newspaper. The funny pages, with their bright, vibrant colors and beloved characters like Snoopy, Garfield, or Dennis the Menace, made the absolute best wrapping paper in the world. You would spread the large sheets out on the kitchen table, carefully folding the newsprint around the rectangular board game or the new toy car. The smell of the fresh newspaper ink mixed with the anticipation of the party. Using the Sunday comics was a badge of cleverness. It gave the gift a cheerful, playful appearance that standard paper simply could not match. Sometimes you would catch the birthday boy or girl trying to read the comic strips on the box before tearing it open. This habit cost absolutely nothing, but it added so much character and joy to the act of giving. It was a reflection of an era where newspapers were central to family life, where everyone fought over who got to read the funnies first, and where repurposing something ordinary into something celebratory was just a normal part of life. We were rich in imagination, taking the everyday materials around us and turning them into delightful, memorable moments of childhood joy. Think about the kitchen sink after a school day in the 1970s. Next to the drying plates and silverware, you would often see something that might shock a modern teenager. Carefully washed plastic sandwich bags were turned inside out and draped over wooden spoons or the kitchen faucet to dry. And right beside them, pieces of aluminum foil, smoothed out by hand, were waiting to be used again. We did not live in a disposable culture. Plastic zip bags and heavy-duty foil were considered premium items, entirely too expensive to be used just once and casually tossed into the trash. When you came home from school, you brought your lunchbox straight to the kitchen, and your mother would retrieve the plastic bag that held your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. With a drop of dish soap and warm water, it was cleaned, rinsed, and prepped for tomorrow. Aluminum foil was treated with even more reverence. You would gently wipe off the crumbs, taking care not to tear the fragile silver sheet, and fold it neatly into a square. The crinkling sound of the foil being smoothed flat was a familiar symphony of the frugal kitchen. It taught us an incredible respect for our possessions. We understood the life cycle of the things we bought, recognizing that convenience did not equal disposability. These tiny acts of washing and smoothing grounded us, reminding us that true wealth comes from taking care of what you have. Let us recall the familiar sight of a plastic bottle sitting upside down on the edge of the bathtub or the kitchen counter. In our homes, a bottle of shampoo, dish soap, or even ketchup was never considered empty until it had been thoroughly rinsed with water. When the shampoo refused to squeeze out of the thick plastic nozzle, you did not throw it away. You held it under the warm running tap, added a splash of water, shook it vigorously, and magically created enough suds for at least 2 more showers. You could hear the watery sloshing sound as you shook the bottle, a triumphant noise that meant you had outsmarted the packaging. The same ritual applied to the dish soap by the kitchen sink. That pale, watery pink or green liquid at the very end of the bottle cleaned the plates just as well as the thick syrup did. We squeezed every single cent of value out of the products we purchased. It was a stubborn, beautiful refusal to waste. It taught children a profound lesson about resourcefulness. You do not just give up when things seem depleted. With a little creativity and a splash of water, you can always make things stretch a little further. This frugal habit made us feel victorious, giving us a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that we had used absolutely everything we paid for, leaving nothing behind but an immaculately clean, genuinely empty bottle. Can you hear the sharp, echoing click of a plastic light switch being flipped off? In the 1970s, during the height of the energy crisis, leaving a light on in an empty room was considered a major household offense. Fathers acted as the unofficial guardians of the electric meter, constantly patrolling the hallways and barking out the familiar phrase, "Do you think we own the electric company?" We were trained from a very young age to turn off the light the very second we stepped out of a bedroom or a bathroom. Walking through the house at night meant navigating through comforting pockets of darkness, guided only by the soft glow of a small hallway nightlight or the moonlight streaming through the living room curtains. We did not need the house illuminated like a sports stadium to feel safe or comfortable. This relentless focus on conserving electricity was born out of financial necessity and national energy campaigns, but it instilled in us a profound mindfulness about the energy we consumed. We understood that electricity was not magic. It was a resource that cost hard-earned money. The rhythmic clicking off of switches as the family settled down for the night was the soundtrack of a disciplined, well-managed home. It created a cozy, intimate atmosphere, teaching us that sometimes sitting in the quiet shadows was much more peaceful than glaring artificial light. Let us wander into the bedroom and open the closet doors, where the story of a family was written in fabric. In our era, clothing was meant to travel. Being the youngest sibling meant you lived your early life entirely in hand-me-downs. You would wait with eager anticipation as a heavy cardboard box of clothes was dragged down from the attic at the change of the seasons. You could smell the distinct aroma of mothballs and cedar as the lid was lifted. Inside were corduroy pants, heavy winter coats, and striped shirts that had previously belonged to your older brother or sister. Trying on these clothes felt like inheriting a legacy. You wore the same jacket your brother wore when he learned to ride a bike. The slightly frayed cuffs and faded knees were not flaws. They were evidence of a life well lived. We did not demand brand new wardrobes for every single school year. Mothers would skillfully alter hems, take in waists, and change out buttons to make an older garment feel fresh and tailored to the new owner. This cycle of sharing clothes forged a physical bond between siblings and cousins. It eliminated the intense pressure of fast fashion and brand names that plague young people today. We were warm, we were protected, and we felt incredibly rich because we were wrapped in the history of our own family, wearing garments that carried the love and memories of those who grew up right beside us. Think back to the comforting, savory aroma that filled the house around 5 o'clock in the evening. This was the golden age of the casserole, the ultimate weapon in a frugal mother's culinary arsenal. When the grocery budget was tight, a single pound of ground beef or a small can of tuna fish could miraculously feed a family of 6. The secret lay in the brilliant combination of inexpensive starches, creamy canned soups, and whatever vegetables were lingering in the refrigerator. Do you remember the crunch of crushed potato chips or breadcrumbs baked perfectly golden brown on top of a bubbling tuna noodle casserole? Or the savory magic of a hamburger helper stretching meat into a massive skillet of cheesy macaroni? These meals were hearty, intensely flavorful, and undeniably comforting. The heavy glass Pyrex dish, hot from the oven, was placed in the center of the table, and everyone scooped out large, steaming portions. We never felt deprived. In fact, These stretched-out meals were often our absolute favorites. The casserole was a symbol of maternal ingenuity, proving that you did not need expensive cuts of steak to create a satisfying, deeply nourishing family dinner. Sitting around the table, passing the heavy baking dish, scraping the deliciously crispy edges, we experienced a profound sense of abundance. Our stomachs were full, our home was warm, and our family was tightly gathered around a meal made primarily of love and creativity. Let us take a walk down a hot summer sidewalk in the 1970s, keeping our eyes peeled for a glimmer of discarded treasure. For a child back then, an empty glass soda bottle was not trash. It was actual currency. Every heavy, curve-shaped bottle of Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or RC Cola carried a 2 or 5 cent deposit. We would scour the neighborhood, looking in the tall grass by the roadside or checking the bleachers at the local baseball diamond for these glass gold mines. Once you collected a rattling wagon full of bottles, you would proudly march down to the corner grocery store or the local gas station. You can still hear the distinct clinking sound of glass hitting glass as you place them on the counter. The clerk would tally them up, and in return, you received cold, hard coins placed directly into your sweaty palm. That deposit money meant immediate access to penny candy, baseball cards, or a brand-new ice-cold bottle of soda for yourself. It was our very first job, a master class in entrepreneurship and recycling rolled into one. We learned the value of a nickel and the direct reward of hard work. We kept our streets clean not out of environmental obligation, but because we saw value where others saw waste. That feeling of walking out of the store with a pocket full of jingling change, earned entirely by your own 2 hands, made you feel like the wealthiest kid in the entire town. Do you remember the intense, sweltering heat of the kitchen in late August? This was the time for canning, a massive, exhausting, yet incredibly rewarding household event. When the backyard garden or the local farmer's market exploded with a surplus of tomatoes, green beans, and cucumbers, nothing was allowed to spoil. The kitchen counters would be covered in mountains of fresh produce. The heavy, metallic smell of the massive pressure cooker steaming on the stove mingled with the sharp tang of vinegar and dill. Mothers and grandmothers would work tirelessly, sterilizing heavy glass mason jars and carefully packing them with bright red tomatoes or crisp green pickles. You could hear the satisfying metallic pop of the metal lids sealing shut as the jars cooled on the dining room table. That popping sound was the music of food security. As the jars were carried down to the dark, cool shelves of the root cellar or the basement, you could look at the vibrant rows of colorful food and feel a deep, primal sense of safety. When the bitter cold of a January winter set in, opening a jar of summer tomatoes for a spaghetti sauce brought the sunshine right back into the kitchen. This monumental effort connected us to the earth and the seasons. It was hard labor, but looking at those beautifully stocked basement shelves provided a feeling of wealthy independence that a quick trip to a modern supermarket can never match. Let us feel the sudden chill of a crisp autumn morning creeping through the single-pane windows of a 1970s home. When you complained to your parents that you were cold, their response was immediate, predictable, and universally understood. They did not walk over to the hallway thermostat to turn up the expensive furnace. Instead, they told you to go put on a sweater. The thermostat was a heavily guarded piece of household machinery, often kept hovering around 65 degrees during the harsh winter months. Heating oil and natural gas were expensive, and turning up the heat was viewed as a frivolous luxury. So, we adapted. We lived in thick, itchy wool sweaters, heavy corduroy pants, and thick knitted socks. We slept under heavy piles of handmade quilts and afghans, the weight of the blankets pressing down on us like a warm, comforting hug. The cold air in the house made the localized heat sources feel like magic. Gathering around the brick fireplace, hovering near the kitchen oven while dinner was baking, or fighting over the single heating vent in the floorboard were communal activities that brought the family physically closer together. We learned to warm our bodies rather than attempting to warm the entire empty house. This rugged resilience made us tough, and it taught us that comfort is not something you buy by turning a dial, but something you create with layers of wool and the warmth of your family. Can you smell the rich, intoxicating aroma of yeast blooming in a warm kitchen? Before the days of massive bakery aisles filled with heavily preserved sliced white bread, many mothers took pride in baking their own loaves from scratch. The process of making homemade bread was a slow, deliberate ritual that commanded the entire afternoon. You would watch the flour billow into the air like a soft winter snow, as the heavy dough was kneaded by strong, capable hands. The dough was placed in a large, greased bowl, covered with a slightly damp dish towel, and left in the warmest spot in the kitchen to rise. Waiting for the dough to double in size was an exercise in pure patience. When it finally went into the hot oven, the scent would permeate every single corner of the house, drawing kids in from the backyard like a magnet. Taking that hot golden brown loaf out of the oven and slicing into it while it was still steaming was a moment of pure bliss. A thick slice of fresh bread, generously smeared with slowly melting butter, was the ultimate after-school snack. It cost only pennies in flour and yeast, but it tasted like absolute royalty. Baking bread was a physical manifestation of a mother's care. It taught us that the best things in life take time, muscle, and patience. The warmth of the kitchen and the unmatched taste of a fresh loaf made our homes feel like sanctuaries of endless, delicious abundance. Let us spread the Wednesday or Sunday newspaper out across the kitchen table once again, but this time we are not looking at the funny pages. We are armed with a sharp pair of heavy metal scissors, hunting for savings. Clipping grocery coupons was a highly organized weekly strategic mission for 1970s housewives. You would scan the black and white pages, carefully cutting out little rectangular boxes that offered 10 cents off a box of cereal or 20 cents off a can of coffee. The snipping sound of the scissors was a steady rhythm of thrift. These fragile pieces of paper were then meticulously filed into a dedicated coupon wallet, organized by category, from dairy to canned goods to household cleaners. When it was time to go to the grocery store, the shopping list was built entirely around what was on sale and which coupons were expiring. Standing at the checkout counter, watching the cashier manually punch in the discounts and seeing the final grocery total drop lower and lower was a profound victory. It was a tangible contribution to the family budget. This habit taught us the importance of planning ahead, of being fiercely protective of our hard-earned money, and of finding joy in outsmarting the system. The thick stack of clipped coupons represented security, proving that through diligence and attention to detail, A family could live incredibly well without having to spend a fortune. Think back to the endless, unstructured afternoons of childhood where boredom was not a crisis to be solved by a screen, but a blank canvas for our imaginations. We did not have overflowing toy boxes filled with electronic gadgets that did all the thinking for us. Instead, we found true magic in the most mundane household items. A large, heavy cardboard refrigerator box was not trash. It was the ultimate prize. With a pair of scissors and a set of thick magic markers, that box was transformed into an impenetrable fortress, a roaring spaceship, or a secret clubhouse. We made telephones out of 2 empty tin cans and a long piece of stretched cotton string, marveling at how our voices carried across the backyard. A few old bed sheets draped over the dining room chairs instantly became a sprawling tent city. We built elaborate wooden ramps for our toy cars using scrap plywood from the garage. This scarcity of pre-packaged entertainment forced our minds to work in overdrive. We learned spatial awareness, basic engineering, and the power of cooperative storytelling. We did not need to buy expensive toys because we had the ability to build entire universes out of whatever was lying around. This kind of play was deeply fulfilling, forging lifelong memories and a powerful creative spirit that made our childhoods feel infinitely rich, completely free from the constraints of money. Let us step out the back door and feel the warm, dark soil between our fingers. Long after the official victory gardens of the war eras had ended, the tradition of the backyard vegetable garden remained a fierce point of pride in the 1970s. Almost every suburban and rural backyard had a carefully tilled square of earth, neatly divided into rows. Gardening was a collective family chore. Children were tasked with the tedious job of pulling weeds, hunting for destructive tomato hornworms, and watering the thirsty plants with a heavy rubber garden hose. You could smell the sharp green scent of tomato vines and the earthy aroma of wet dirt. Watching a tiny, fragile seed grow into a massive, sprawling plant that actually produced food felt like witnessing a daily miracle. When it was time to harvest, we ate what we grew. Dinners consisted of fresh snap peas, warm cucumbers right off the vine, and sweet corn on the cob. This frugal habit significantly lowered the summer grocery bill, but its true value went much deeper. It connected us to the fundamental cycles of life. We learned the virtue of hard work, the unpredictability of the weather, and the profound, unmatched taste of a vegetable that you nurtured with your own hands. The garden was our outdoor classroom, a sanctuary of green life that provided us with a vibrant, edible wealth right in our own backyards. And finally, as the evening draws to a close, let us gather around the heavily varnished coffee table in the living room. Going out to the movies or eating at a restaurant were rare, expensive luxuries reserved only for very special occasions. Instead, our weekend entertainment came in brightly colored cardboard boxes stored in the hall closet. This was the era of the sacred family game night. Someone would pull out Monopoly, Scrabble, or Yahtzee. The sound of plastic dice rattling inside a cup and tumbling onto the wooden table is a sound that instantly brings back the warmth of those nights. Arguments would erupt over the rules, alliances were formed, and laughter echoed off the walls. You could smell the popcorn popping on the stove, serving as the perfect, inexpensive treat. We were completely present with one another. There were no cell phones to distract us, no separate televisions in every bedroom. We looked each other in the eye. We talked, we joked, and we learned how to win and lose with grace. This simple, frugal habit of playing board games cost absolutely nothing once the game was purchased, but it generated an immeasurable amount of emotional wealth. It solidified the family unit, creating an unbreakable bond of shared experiences and inside jokes. In those moments, sitting closely together under the warm glow of the living room lamp, we had absolutely everything we could ever possibly need. As we put away the board games and turn off the living room lamp one last time, we are left with a beautiful philosophical truth. When we look back at the 1970s, we realize that we are not just missing the old objects, the glass soda bottles, or the iron-on patches. What we are truly grieving for is the way we felt back then. We are missing the unhurried pace of our youth, the quiet resilience of our parents, and the deep, unbreakable connection we had with one another. True wealth was never about the size of our bank accounts or the brand names on our clothing. It was about the time we spent together, the creativity we shared, and the love that filled our modest homes. If these memories brought a warm feeling to your heart, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video so we can continue to preserve these beautiful pieces of our shared history. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which of these frugal 1970s habits do you miss the most? Or what special ritual did your family have that made you feel wealthy? Please share your personal stories in the comments below, and let us keep these wonderful memories alive together.